Background, by the way.
Uh,
My background.
no, mine is not completely fake at all. Mine is actually quite, like I said, I had a normal background, but mine is kind of the actual background of the
Oh,
house. Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
Just in case they ask.
Just I see. Good morning, colleagues, and welcome to season 2, episode 11. Yes, it's 12 and 11. We've done this for 23 straight months, and we're sort of quite proud of what we've been doing. The Guyana Business Journal and the Caribbean Policy Consortium welcome you to their webinar series, Transforming Guyana. I'm Terrence Blackman, Associate Professor of Mathematics at Medgar Evers College in the City University of New York and the founder of the Guyana Business Journal. And I'm joined today by Dr. Riyad Insanali, former Guyanese ambassador to the United States and fellow at the Caribbean Policy Consortium. Let me take this moment to wish a blessed Eid to all of our Muslim colleagues who are celebrating the breaking of the fast, the end of Ramadan. And let me also say this question emerges quite frequently. A question emerges quite consistently as to the the vision that the Guyana Business Journal aspires to. And so I want to say that the GBGA aims to offer some transformative and pragmatic, important word, pragmatic thought leadership that aims to empower and enrich Guyana and its people broadly in 3 areas. Key is to improve economic, social, and security conditions to broadly create more equitable and diverse opportunities for all of Guyanese. 2, to kind of enhance inclusive democracy and ensure harmonious, resilient, and flourishing Guyana where every citizen benefits from the economic growth, regardless of backgrounds and beliefs. And so GBJ's vision is a Guyana that is stronger, more inclusive, and prosperous for all. I want to reiterate that GBJ's vision is a Guyana that is stronger, more inclusive, and prosperous for all. And we think that in order to do this, we configured the series Transforming Guyana to sort of bridge the gap between experts and prominent voices from Guyana, the Caribbean, the diaspora, and to discuss the far-reaching impacts of Guyana's oil and gas development. We will from time to time challenge the conventional wisdom, but we hope always to offer a balanced and insightful look at the opportunities and potential pitfalls ahead for Guyana, and to explore innovative and effective strategies to maximize the positive impacts of the oil revenues in Guyana's people in future, while mitigating the risks that other countries have faced. And so today we're pleased to welcome one of our favorites, Karen Abrams. Karen is a renowned advocate for STEM education who is dedicated to empowering young people in Guyana and other vulnerable communities. Her core expertise lies in business, technology, and education. Karen's passion for STEM education led her to found and spearhead the STEM Guyana initiative, where she's helped to train STEM club leaders, develop mobile apps, support children's learning, and steer several of Guyana's youth towards participation in global robotics challenges. One we all remember, the very first Guyanese team that excelled at the robotics and the feeling that it brought to our country. Uh, Her contributions in the field have been recognized by the Inter-American Development Bank, the Tullow Oil Company, and they recently invested perhaps a combined of $1 million in STEM Guyana's learning pods to support vulnerable children with access to STEM education across the 10 regions of Guyana. And so Karen is committed to expanding the reach of STEM education beyond Guyana and into vulnerable communities around the world. She holds a bachelor's degree in management from Howard University, an MBA in marketing from San Francisco State University, and is currently pursuing a doctorate degree in educational technology at the University of Florida, where she continues to explore innovative ways to empower young people, promote social change. Karen also brings to this space more than a decades long career in corporate America, where she ended her career as director of operations at one of America's largest internet companies. We were supposed to have been joined by Mark Itwaru, a Canadian-based Guyanese tech entrepreneur who returned to Guyana to lead the transformative One Guyana digital initiative, which is a strategic collaboration between Guyana Online Academy of Learning, GOAL, and the Toronto Metropolitan University, aimed at bolstering digital literacy across the country. The One Guyana Digital Initiative aims to train 2,000 Guyanese as full stack developers with a special focus on women and indigenous peoples. And so broadly, this initiative is poised to create a more diverse and skilled workforce, which was the point of our thrust today, and certainly to address the challenge of the shortage of technical professionals in the country in a manner that sort of aligns with, you know, local expectations and broadly global standards. Unfortunately, Mark is unable to be with us this morning, and we look forward to hosting him in subsequent programs. So Karen, Riyad, and I will shed some light on this business of innovative strategies for community engagement in this growing Guyanese oil and gas economy. So before I go further, let me ask Ambassador Nsinali to bring a word of greeting on behalf of our partners, the Caribbean Policy Consortium. Ambassador Nsinali.
Thank you, Terence. Good morning and Eid Mubarak to all. I am honored to be representing the Caribbean Policy Consortium today. In fact, I am a substitute. I'm sitting in for Dr. David Lewis, the founder and co-chair of the Caribbean Policy Consortium, who had urgent business to attend to. So you'll have to forgive me if I'm a bit of a substitute player on this team, but I'm nevertheless delighted to be part of this conversation. And you should know that the CPC, the Caribbean Policy Consortium, is a virtual think tank of some 25 experts from the Caribbean and from the United States as well. The focus has been U.S.-Caribbean relations, but the interests of the fellows and the broadened focus of the CPC itself is everything to do with the Caribbean, everything that advances Caribbean interests and everything that serves to support the development of Caribbean policy in the various jurisdictions across the region. In this case, of course, we're focusing on Guyana as an integral part of the Caribbean region and as perhaps the driver of growth across the region for some time to come. And a lot will depend, of course, on how we manage the new resources and the transition to the new economy. And in this context, we have a focus today on community engagement, STEM education, and more of which you'll hear from Karen Abrams, who has a very informative presentation for us. And then we can look forward to a lively discussion among the three of us and probing questions from you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention, and let's get into it.
Thank you, Riyad. You know, you mentioned the sort of driver of growth, and in a sense, that was one of the in queuing up sort of Karen. I wanted to kind of just kind of elaborate a bit on some of the thoughts since Mark is not here, I can take this moment to elaborate on some of the thoughts that we engaged as part of setting this program up. So, kind of broadly, thinking through, offering thoughts, consistent, ongoing thoughts on, the significance of the oil and gas industry, and then thinking through what sort of objectives do we have for community development, what are our strategies for local benefit, and then broadly a discussion around which we engage the audience on sharing perspectives. And so I wanted to start in this context. I wanted to start with a kind of overview or maybe I shouldn't say overview, because I'm not going to take a complete deep dive into this at this moment, but I wanted to start with just kind of some data points in the Guyana's oil and gas journey at this moment. So I'll remind folks that in March, ExxonMobil announced discovery at Bluefin in the Stabroek Block. It was the company's first discovery of 2024. There are a couple of things that I always like to say to folks. Bluefin was encountered at approximately 197 feet. So it's been drilled in 4,244 feet, 1,294 meters of water. So what is key, and I think this goes to the conversation that we're having here. What is key is that for us to be engaged in this game of oil and gas discovery, there are some things that have to be in place. There are people skills have to be in place, and technology skills have to be in place at the cutting level, at the cutting edge, to be able to responsibly safely deliver these oil and gas resources to Guyana. It's vital that we understand that this is a scientifically intensive operation that is delivering this bounty to us. Secondly, what we should also understand is the impact, the economic impact, the outsized economic impact of what's going on. So Bluefin joins more than 30 already made discoveries in the Stabroek Block. And I will note for our listeners here, and we have listeners listeners all across the world, London, in the UK, in Toronto, in Canada, in Trinidad and Tobago, and all across the world. And so it's important for Guyanese to be able to avail themselves of the thinking that exists all across the world. So here's what the numbers look like. In the first quarter of 2024, Guyana earned in Guyanese dollars $126.3 billion. In American dollars, that's about 604 million. Let me repeat that. That's 604 million United States dollars from oil revenues, as documented by our National Resource Fund records in the first quarter of 2024. If we were to go back to, say, pre-oil budgets, 2018-19 budgets, the budgets of 2018-19, I fairly estimate were maybe of the order of 250 to 300 billion. In the first quarter of 2024, we're close to 50% of what our traditional budgets would have looked like. And so it gives you a sense of the scale of what's going on. And it's sort of reasonable to expect that we're at around about 600,000 barrels now. And it's reasonable to expect that we will be close to, certainly if projections hold, we'll be close to north of 1 million barrels per day in around about 2030 latest. And so this has created sort of a wonderful opportunity for Guyana. And it has, and many of us have seen this graph. We've seen this graph where someone has been charting the GDP in South America, and it's been shared on the internet, where Guyana sits at number 2 across the entire South American region, right? So this discovery of hydrocarbons has really opened up the opportunity for the possibility of Guyana being a major oil and gas producer globally. It has boosted our economic development from that of one of the poorest countries in the Americas, right? So our projections put us certainly by 2025 we could be at 750,000 barrels per day, and certainly by 2030 we're more than 1 million barrels per day. What are the challenges, right? So it's key. This increase in global oil production has an impact on oil geopolitics, and due to the sort of geostrategic position of Guyana is a big player. Like it or not, we're a big player. And we have to manage the challenges that are there. And key to those challenges are really making proper use of the resources to avoid the adverse effects, right? And it's the question of the resource curse is one which is real, and we have to think about how we deal with the broad economic diversification of our economy in a way that allows us to kind of manage the shocks that come from this increasing outside pull that oil has on our economy. And what is key, and I think it's extremely important for folks to understand this, what is key is that we have to be mindful of the volatility of commodity prices. They do create a certain kind of risk and a certain kind of uncertainty, and we would be mindful to continue to be very thoughtful, very prudent in the ways in which we approach the bounty that has been kind of bestowed upon us. And so now I just wanted to say a few words about kind of how do we broadly think of community engagement? How do we think about job training? How do we think about infrastructure development and social programs? And just have a few cues before we listen to Karen's presentation. So, in a sense, when we think about community engagement, we're thinking about a kind of collaborative process of working through groups of people for mutually beneficial exchange of knowledge and resources, right? So the key objective here is strengthening the relationships across the society, building trust across the society, promoting really sincere collaboration, increasing collective self-efficacy and resilience, and addressing the well-being of our people within the context of partnership, within the context of reciprocity, within the context of facilitated communication, right? And we've seen the contours of this broad strategic challenge for community development in the recent in our recent President Ali interview with the British reporter. This aspect of the striking the balance between kind of the broader climate trends, the broader global trends that is relates to the exploitation of fossil fuel, oil and gas, and the very, very reasonable desires for prosperity on the part of Guyanese. And so, what we will see as this evolves is some optimal balancing, some transitioning from our current sort of energy mix, something that allows us to perhaps exploit, as many have talked about, this low carbon economics, but we haven't seen it all yet. But the tension is there, and this is why it's important for us to talk about ensuring inclusive growth. This is why it's important for us to talk about job training and employment opportunities. And this is why it's important for us to, to talk about infrastructure development and the social programs as a catalyst for distributing oil wealth to benefit the largest possible, and I emphasize that, the largest possible number of citizens. And let me just make one other point before I, or maybe two other points before I transition to Karen. You know, these objectives are interconnected, right? Aiming to ensure that the benefits of Guyana's economy are widely shared and contribute to a sustainable development. And what we need is comprehensive, deeply well thought out approaches to managing the challenges and the opportunities that present themselves in this significant economic transition. And I want to say one word of something many of you know, but my mom is a teacher. I come from a family of teachers, and one of the issues that is I've followed very closely has been this question of the teacher strike and the teachers returning to power. And I saw recently that the teachers have sort of broadly outlined some options, which include going back on strike. And the point I want to make here is that this discussion of community engagement, really, in some sense, this is one element of that broader discussion. How do we better resource our education sector? And I want you to understand that our teachers, I mentioned earlier, we're in our first quarter, we're perhaps looking at a budget that is the income in our first quarter from the oil and gas industry, in a sense, amounts to what half of our budget looked like pre-oil and gas. And so in this context, we genuinely need to be thinking about how we manage better wages for our teachers and to ensure that reasonable people are at the table having the kind of conversation that is necessary, that moves the conflict forward. You know, I know that some of you listening might say, well, we do have these strategies for local benefit. You know, the government has implemented, a local continent policy that maximizes, participation of Guyanese in the petroleum sector. But it's key for us to understand that the vast majority of Guyanese are not small businesses that can participate in the value chain. And so people who are sitting in the service sector, in the public sector, that we have to be thinking about how we broaden the benefits of this resource to that sector. So, we at the Guyana Business Journal strongly support the local content policy, and we strongly support the expansion of in inappropriate ways. But we also want to raise the question of the broader mix of participation in the oil and gas economy. And it's in that context that we wanted to hear from Karen Abrams to sort of broadly highlight some of the work that has been done by STEM Guyana that, in a sense, aligns with the GBJ CPC model of having innovative and creative and impactful solutions to the kinds of challenges that we face, perhaps non-traditional solutions to the kinds of challenges that we face. And it's in this context that I invite Karen to speak to us now around the issue of the foundation of STEM and the work that STEM Guyana has been doing all across the 10 regions of our country. So, Karen.
Thank you, Dr. Blackman, and good morning, and thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Blackman, Terrence, there seems to be, I don't know if your mic is right where the paper is, but every time you touch the paper, it creates
I see. I see. Every time I change my notes.
Yeah. Yes. Are you changing the slides for me?
I'll change the slides for you. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the second one.
Okay.
So today I did something a bit different. On previous appearances here and in other places, I tend to just focus on STEM Guyana and the learning pods. I think it's important at this point to recognize that we are part of an environment, and we are indeed just a small part of the pipeline. And one of the things I decided to go back to do was to look at what's happening, not downstream, but upstream. And so I decided to take a look at the early childhood education component of the pipeline. And these are the kids, of course, this is the beginning of the pipeline, and these kids eventually feed into our program, some of them, and then some of them eventually feed into the university level and other careers. And so we want to make sure that as many students as possible, as many learners as possible are being exposed and being well prepared to enter into this pipeline so we can maximize the number of young people, of learners who eventually go on to tertiary education or go on to technical education, and who can make a meaningful impact to the development of the country. So when I think about the early childhood education, the benefits, I think of programs in the United States like Head Start, right? This is well researched. This is not even debatable about the importance of this program. And the whole Head Start program in the US is funded because they wanted to ensure, first of all, they identified that there was a significant gap between the vulnerable young people and those kids who were well prepared by their parents, who were read to as children, who had books at home, who had access to games and things to stimulate their minds, and the other young people who didn't at all have access to these things. And so Head Start was sort of a solution to that. Let's essentially give the young people who were vulnerable an equitable start. And the Head Start does pay dividends in the United States. And so here, when you look at early childhood education, not only does it promote school readiness, but it essentially can break the cycle of poverty. So the way I think about it is learning sticks to learning. And the earlier you get children exposed to concepts, whether it's in literacy or numeracy, then the easier it is for them to pick up additional concepts as they move through the educational pipeline. So if by the end of the nursery program they're not recognizing letters or their numbers, then they're at a disadvantage when they get into first grade or kindergarten and then second grade and so on. So these things impact the results that we get and the goals we're trying to achieve. Now, social skills, of course, very important, and those early nursery days help to reinforce and strengthen those skills. Some of those skills the kids aren't getting at home. So this is important stuff. Fundamentally reducing the achievement gap. Again, quite important. And then bringing parents into the process. Next slide. All right, so here's what's happening at the nursery level in Guyana. And again, let me just say that these issues, the next two slides, have bedeviled both administrations. So this is not, I know there's some sensitivities around these issues, but we have to discuss them. And they have very little to do with politics. And these are sort of the reality on the ground. So this is based on, in 2015, a diagnostic of 7,000 nursery school students. And what they found was 50% of the kids in the coastal regions attained approaching mastery in literacy. Only 50%. And 53% in numeracy. So that's 50% in reading, at their reading level, and then 53% at the math level. Now, for the children in the hinterland region, compared to 50% in literacy, theirs was 39%, and then in numeracy, theirs was 41%. So right off the bat, you can see at the nursery level upstream, we have more than half of the children, on average, who are just not prepared to build on, to have an easy path going through that educational system, right? If half of them aren't reading and recognizing letters and so on, they're already at a disadvantage. So let's go to the second grade and see if we get an improvement there. So in the second grade, we find out that only 14% of grade 2 students receive scores indicating they attained the standard in literacy. 41% were approaching standard. So let's go, 41% were approaching standard in literacy. So the numbers don't change that much, right? And then next slide. In math. So the math problem we're all aware of. You saw what happened in nursery level. I will tell you that the second grade level, it doesn't get any better. The fourth grade assessment doesn't get any better. And then you get to the sixth grade and it actually gets worse. So less than 45% of students attained a passing grade in math. And then you go on to the grade 11, the CSEC exam, and only 53% of students attain a passing math grade. And that's a grade 1, 2, or 3, right? So let's go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
So fundamentally, that's the foundation upon which we are attempting to resource this oil economy. And I say oil economy, but then let's think as well. We're a developing nation. So not only are we trying to develop the oil economy, we have infrastructure imperatives: road, water, sewage, electricity, internet. And, you know, just here in Region 4, if you go up the Linden-Soesdijk Highway, there's a slew of communities that will need electricity, will need water, right? So who's building out those areas? We need talent in order to conduct this massive infrastructure development that has to happen here in Guyana. Now think about healthcare. You know, if we're building, I've heard 10 hospitals, we have our existing healthcare system. We need professionals as well for that industry. Education, the same thing, information systems, agriculture. If we want to compete favorably and lower our cost of production, increase yield and lower production costs, we have to use technology. So agriculture, we can't just throw the bodies of people who, let's say, didn't finish school or dropped out and so on. The future of agriculture is inextricably tied to technology, right? And so is security. And then I put technology there as a standalone because I'm thinking about technology businesses, right? Just the innovators, the things they come up with. And so if we're losing half of those students, if they're not mastering literacy and numeracy coming through the pipeline, then they're not available to populate these roles.
Well,
fundamentally. So let's see the other slide.
Yeah.
So the STEM imperative. You know, why STEM? Why this focus on STEM? And I just read this huge update to an article relevant to the United States. But here in Guyana, we have our own imperative here. I just showed you all the different parts of the economy that need talent, need innovation, and need just people, trained people. For these jobs. So the diversification of the economy, it is important for us to have young people in these roles so that we can strengthen our economy and diversify it, right? Innovation and technology advancement, you don't do innovation without young people who are involved in STEM. It's just, you can't, it's hard to do. It's hard to do it now. And so if you're struggling in math, it's really difficult to do robotics and coding. And if you're struggling with with literacy, it's an even bigger problem. I would say that fundamentally our issue is not even how many STEM kids do we need and creating these robotic students and all this stuff. I think the issue is literacy and numeracy. Fundamentally, I think that's the big issue for government, and it's literacy and it's numeracy and it's strengthening that foundation. It's making it broad based. It's making it equal, um, having some parity with the results we see on the coast and in the hinterland areas, and so that every young person who wants to has the opportunity to move through the system and to take advantage of this oil economy we talked about, or of this just diversified and growing economy, developing economy. Um, Efficient infrastructure development. If your engineers aren't well trained, if your engineers aren't trained at all, and they are overseeing road building or any sort of infrastructure development, then you're going to run into issues of not only overruns, you're going to run into issues of poor quality development, etc. These things are inextricably tied together, right? Higher wages for locals. There's no debate about this. This has to happen. This has to happen. Um, our wages. Listen, it's a selling point to overseas investors when you say that you can get a sort of an educated young person to work in your potential in business for less than $5 an hour or something like that. I mean, it's a sell. They love that in their own hemisphere, 4 hours away from Miami, English speaking, you can find a low wage worker. Well, that has to be balanced against the imperatives in the country. If we're an oil economy now, um, and so, with the rapid investments, our young people, as you said earlier, we have to find a way to make sure that those who are not directly in the oil and gas sector can also benefit from decent wages. It's an issue that needs really key attention, and it shouldn't be politicized. It shouldn't be politicized. It's almost like a human dignity issue, right? And then there's education and research. You have more STEM professionals, you have more research going on, you have more innovation research going on. It's just the two go together, right? And then environmental sustainability. I just read an article yesterday about how a good portion of our groundwater was contaminated, not here in Guyana necessarily, but globally. Can you imagine? And so these are the things that we want our smart young people researching and looking at and on the front lines for. So this STEM imperative is important. It's not just STEM for the sake of STEM. And again, it goes back to how do we get enough bright young people, not bright young people, enough young people to be bright enough to participate in this space. Next slide.
Mm.
All right. So, oftentimes you hear, I put this slide in because I wanted to make it very clear what it is we're talking about here. Oil and gas is only just one component of this thing. If we are to have a diversified economy, you're looking at professionals that are needed in infrastructure. You need your civil engineers, your electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, urban planners. You go into the healthcare scheme. It's not only your doctors and nurses, your pharmacists, your biomedical engineers. If you're thinking innovation, you're looking for people who can do research, who can broaden the space, who can expand the knowledge sector, right? On the agricultural front, agricultural engineers, right? Crop scientists, livestock managers, and all of these folks operating in this new environment that is underpinned by technology, right? And of course, on your oil and gas front, you have your petroleum engineers, your geologists, etc. And then information systems, you have your 25,000 people that you want to code, but those people are just a subset of all of the technical people that you need to develop the nation properly, right? So again, ties back into what's feeding the pipeline for this output that we need, right? So what is the next slide, Terrence, please? All right. So the challenge lack of innovation and tech advancement. Um, Again, if you don't have, if you're not developing that cadre of young people in STEM, then you're not going to get that reward of that focus on innovation and technical advancement. You're going to have a skill shortage. But while you have a skill shortage, you also have a persistent unemployment problem. So it's a very strange combination that you have. You have a lot of people who are not working, but they don't have the skills to fill the roles that are available, right? And of course, upward pressure on wages. And so there should be upward pressure on wages, but it's better for the powers that be to work with the representatives of the employees and agree on some reasonable level of wages that will allow the country to allow both sides to be happy, right? Dependence on foreign expertise. It looks like this will happen for a very long time. And essentially what it is that we would like to see is that our young people are the ones in those roles that I shared earlier, and that the foreign labor we bring in fact, should be low wage, should be unskilled labor. It should be our young people who are moving into the roles of geologists and doctors and so on. Now, it'll take some time to get there, but we want to make sure that that pipeline doesn't disadvantage a good large number of our young people, right? So we want to make sure that our citizens, I'll say locals, are able to benefit equitably from the oil and gas job opportunities and just from development in general. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Well, let me just say this. And again, to make clear, these discussions should be without political imperatives. And I want to acknowledge that the government has identified a lot of I could see from the outside, I don't know, I'm not an insider, but I could see from the outside that there are people thinking about these issues. We see the technical issues. The technical institutes are more and more partnering with some of the local business entities. I love to see that. I highly regard the Guyana Government Technical Institute. Many of their young people have worked with us at STEM Guyana, and I regard them quite highly. We know of the government, the Oil and Gas Institute of Port Morant. University of Guyana actually has a very large role to play, and they are definitely in the pipeline. And so what the number of students that we save early on and that move through that pipeline could potentially benefit from the programs offered by the University of Guyana. A lot of those professional jobs that I indicated earlier, those young people will come out of the University of Guyana. It's an important institution. It has to be well funded. It has to be prepared to properly educate these young people. And I don't have any reason to believe that they're not. Goal has a role to play. And so I have to say, full disclosure, we have a nice agreement with Goal, and some of their volunteers come through STEM Guyana. And I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's how we work together to build community and achieve goals and expose these young people to the world of technology, to what the future will bring. And of course, there's the 25,000 developer program. Mark is not here to discuss it for himself. I see the Ministry of Education also released a literacy program last week. So they're quite aware of the scope of the problem. And then I also know that the minister shared about 99% of her teachers are trained or in training. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Of course, the classroom grants I read about, and the cash grants for parents. All of those are good things. All of those are good things. We don't have to choose one or another. We can have all of these things. We have enough. You just said it's $600 million in Q1. If you multiply that by 4, that's a lot of money, and it's not even by 4 because those barrels increase as you go from
As we're going forward.
right? Because more than $2.5 billion at the end of the year. We have enough. We have
Yeah.
enough. We can embrace government programs and we can embrace the innovation from outside and we can fairly take a look at wages. We have enough. Can you turn the all right, so STEM Guyana pivots. So how do these, and again, when you think of the STEM Guyana organization, this is where I will do a bit of a dive. We are not a static, we are a very dynamic organization. We are research-based, and you may find that there might be something that we do in semester 1 or term 1 that's completely different in term 2 or 3. And that's because we're constantly looking at what works. And if it works, we do more of it. If it doesn't, we do less of it. We are trying to get to a model that is efficient and scalable. And yeah, you know what I mean? And so that means that it's a constant research, you know. How do we improve the communication with our volunteers who are critical to the success of the program? You know, how do we improve the relationship with our club leaders? And after, how do we keep them energized and excited about being there and doing this job? You know, because if our teachers aren't well adjusted, if they are not emotionally sound, if they're dealing with issues at home, those are going to be reflected in their behaviors towards our children. And in general, this is something the socio-emotional component of education is very critical. You cannot divorce the performance of the kids in the classroom or the socio-emotional level of the kids in the classroom and that of their teacher. So if you have an underpaid, stressed out teacher, it's not, will be reflected some way.
Yeah, I think it's just to emphasize that point. I think this is a key strategic priority for Guyana, and I think your presentation is making, and I hope that comes through very clearly. That there has to be a mechanism for there to be some balance that, you know, gets the education sector and the actors in the education sector in place in order to meet the challenges that you've outlined. It's as clear as day. I mean, I just thank you for how you.
Well, let me just. I got one more slide. I have
no,
one more slide.
No. I'm just thinking out loud.
Okay.
Sorry.
So
wait, let me make one confession, right? So the one confession is, and that's also kind of not an explicitly stated goal of the Business Journal and the Policy Consortium, which is we tend to invite people who are interesting and have something to say that we can actually learn something from. And so I've already learned something today. And so thank you for that. I'm saying it.
You're welcome. So STEM Guyana pivots because there's a massive problem. No STEM without we've identified that there's no real STEM without the foundation of literacy and numeracy. We can continue to say it and sell the image of it, but fundamentally, our goal is to make sure that more of those young people come through the pipeline, that we have a model that works, that it is scalable, and that the young people can read and write when they come in to build robots and to be exposed to technology and artificial intelligence and so on. So we're also focusing on AI and scaling solutions. We're building out more STEM clubs. We are looking at the Parent Academy some more. We're doing a deep dive because, as you said, this community involvement is critical. Our parents, in doing my outreach, I noticed it's not something that was intuitive to me for some reason. I go to these communities and these parents are young. They're in their 20s and 30s. And I'm thinking, boy, you should be upgrading your skills too to benefit from this economy. So we're looking at some of these things to figure out what we could do. And of course, our math club, this year we started it. And this is all because of your recommendation, Terrence, to expand math across all of the learning pods and all of the STEM clubs. And now we have a math club within each of those. And it is, we see dividends already out of this move. We want to encourage use of our learning platform where we have 10-minute classes. And we want to be more research focused, as I shared with you earlier. Is that my last slide?
No, I think there's a.
Yeah, so this is the last one. So what challenges are we navigating? So believe it or not, we have a sponsorship issue. And I am not sure why. And I can only theorize that perhaps for local companies, they're not used to sort of making investments where they don't see the return for a very long time. And so I theorize that may be part of it. I don't know, but we need to look at that some more, because we've had to walk away from First Global, this thing that we've been doing since 2018, where our young people have been to countries all around the world, have been to Dubai and United States and Singapore, and they've interacted with young people from all over the world. They've responded and performed creditably. Ghana, we put Ghana on the map in a lot of those places, but we just can't afford. We cannot afford to manage this program any longer. So it's going to be something that we're going to hand over, hopefully, to one of the ministries, because it's not something that we can afford to do. It's not properly funded, and every year it's quite stressful to navigate this thing. Again, things as fundamental as approvals and so on. So I go back to this idea of innovation and how innovation can come from anywhere. Like it's not contrived. You can't decide you are an innovator. These innovators have a burning passion, and if you lock them up in a room, they will innovate in that room. That's just the need that they have to do this. And so it is imperative that we allow the grass to grow where it wants to grow. In other words, we allow innovators to move forward through the process, and that will exponentially grow the economy. And whoever's in charge when the economy grows wins. I don't understand it. I mean, I struggle with some issues today. I'm waiting more than a year on some approvals on some things in a ministry, and I look at it and I'm like, this speaks directly to ease of doing business. This speaks directly to the energy that innovators have to push through some of these things. It's like, we want to grow this economy. Let's put in a good foundation that allows everyone equal access to opportunity. That's more than anything else. That's what I would like. We would love to have more collaboration with the ministries. We thank the Ministry of Education for allowing us to grow our learning pods and STEM clubs in some of the schools. I want to say unequivocally that they have allowed us to do this. And for that, we are thankful. We support, not compete. We support government programs. We don't compete with them. We support them. And one other challenge is educating the public about the seriousness of this issue. And I don't think enough people understand how serious an issue this is. But anyway, that's it. Thank you guys for allowing me the time to share.
Well, you had one. If you had one more thing there about
what's going. Let me do this real quick. What's going well? Massive support from the parents. Increasing support from local individuals. Thank you, guys. These guys are sponsoring. The individual citizens are sponsoring individuals and sponsoring vulnerable children month over month. So that's great. Significant support from the diaspora. Many thanks for that. They have carried us when we had nothing, and significant support. Improving our curriculum. We are one of a kind in the Caribbean. And I know this because I've been asked to present to other Caribbean folks, and they're always in awe of the work that we do. And again, our curriculum, artificial intelligence, robotics, math, coding, drone soccer, and agricultural technology. These are the things we're going to be working on in the near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. I mean, I think it's deserving of the hour. And, as always.
Is it an hour? Sorry.
No. I think you painted the picture, the strategic picture perfectly. What is feeding the pipeline, and the broad STEM imperative for Guyana. What's feeding the pipeline and why STEM is important in this context. And I want to bring in I have quite a few comments and questions, so I'm going to put them in as a way of catalyzing the conversation. But first, I want to bring in Riyad to kind of offer his thoughts in this regard, and maybe as I kind of ask you to come in, I'll just post them in. You can see them on the bottom, and since you nominally served in some one of these. The question is broadly, sort of what Exxon's revenue looked like, and then more generally, questions of the diaspora. Well, I'm sorry, I chose the wrong one there. I thought that was about this is kind of slightly off.
Terence, let's take the questions afterwards, because
Yeah.
you're going to get a range of questions on a variety of issues. And right now, I'm seeing a couple of questions that have been raised that don't have anything to do with Karen's very informative
presentation. Yeah, so I want to.
And if I may, just offer a few comments. First of all, thank you, Karen. That was wonderfully informative and very stimulating. I think that as Guyanese, we are all aware of the transformative power of education, but you recognize that there are challenges. And in highlighting the critical importance of early education for building literacy and numeracy skills, you've got to the very root of the major challenge facing our educational sector. There's no point talking about developing skills at the higher level if those basic skills are lacking. I get that loud and clear, and I think you did a great job in emphasizing that critical factor in terms of building our educational system and improving it for the benefit of all Guyanese, for the benefit of our young people, for all generations, and if we're going to talk about a transformative period in the development of our country, then we've got to go back to the transformative power of education and go back to basics. And that came across very clearly, and I thank you for that. I also got from you the absolute importance of technology for development across all sectors and the STEM imperative. But if you can't read and write, then there's going to be no STEM development. We're looking at the imperative of training and upskilling our young people. Even while we look at older generations, the future of Guyana, and this is not a cliche, is in the hands of our young people. I firmly believe that the future of the country is in the retention of our young people to build the country in years to come. We will get people coming back from the diaspora, yes, but realistically, it is the people in Guyana who are there who are the future. And we have to give our young people the best tools and the best opportunities to feel that they can participate fully in the new economy and in the development of Guyana. Again, I thank you for bringing those points out. I would just like to end these comments with an experience that I had a few years ago when I was still ambassador. I was invited by a Guyanese American. He was the mayor of a small town in Loudoun County, Virginia, called Purcellville, Kwesi Fraser. Very dynamic young mayor. And he invited me to see the Academies of Loudoun, which was a project of the Loudoun County Public Schools. And it was a wonderful experiment then, but something that has gone beyond being an experiment, but a wonderful experiment in building partnerships between the educational sector and the business sector, local businesses, to drive local development, economic development, through the empowerment and education of young people in areas that went beyond the strictly academic areas, what we consider traditional academic subjects. There were people doing courses in to be medical technologists, and you highlighted all the skills needed in the new Guyana, and not just the need for engineers, but the need for technicians. So again, we come back to the importance of STEM education and tech voc education. And the Academies of Loudoun was a state-of-the-art facility that covered almost everything from radiology to dental hygiene to body works for automobiles to people who worked in the cosmetic and beauty sector, but everything that would give young people a sense of dignity, that would give them the skills they needed to participate in the local economy, and also provide them with workplace experience, apprenticeships, further training in the business sector, even as they were completing their high school education, so that once they graduated from high school, if they didn't go to university, they had a pathway towards participating in the local economy with dignity, with good income, and with a sense of achievement. And I get from you that a lot of what you're trying to do is to take us along that very same pathway. And I congratulate you on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Thank you, Red. And so there are quite a few comments and uh, broad questions. So perhaps I wanted to start with so that this one, is there somewhere where is there some place, so one of the other things, so the GBJ is focused on sort of questions of meaningful roles that the diaspora can play. And I know that in some previous iteration, Riyadh, you've certainly been involved in efforts to match the diaspora needs with can either of you speak to where that is at this moment? Where's the effort, the database effort, that thing to kind of integrate the diaspora into the broad labor pool, labor needs of Guyana? Can any of you speak to it?
I'm afraid I don't know the state of play uh, of this particular issue in Guyana. This ideally, someone from the coordinator of the diaspora unit in Guyana, Rosalinda Rasul, would be able to tell us more about that.
Better.
Obviously, she's not here. I don't know if Karen has some knowledge of what is doing to match needs with expertise in the diaspora.
I don't. I don't have any idea at all.
Yeah.
Obviously, we need some sort of database.
Yeah.
And this talk has been going on for a long time, even
Right.
before I was ambassador. And I honestly don't know where we are with this.
Yeah, this I think is one of those places. I've seen some comments around, folks suggesting that so there's a kind of suggestion that folks have had many negative experiences and sort of lack the trust and are broadly waiting to see what they perceive as more equitable actions. However, I can't say with specificity where that is. The one question sort of came for you, Karen, was a question about the strategy to integrate, to partner, to collaborate with the Ministry of Education and STEM Guyana. And you spoke to some aspects of that partnership and collaboration, but is there a kind of overarching philosophy, a strategy that's sort of in play that?
Yeah, we have many of our programs can be scaled and distributed through the Ministry of Education's network, well-funded network. We have shared several proposals and ideas with the Ministry of Education. But like I said, they have a huge job to do. They are working with 500 and something schools across 10 regions. And I don't have a sense that, let me just speak practically. We have not been invited into a project with the Ministry of Education. We have reached out. We have not been. However, we have not been turned down by the Ministry of Education. For example, if we wanted to roll out a program in a school in a certain area, there is a process that allows us to do that. And we've done it more than 20 times, and we've never once had them say, no, STEM Guyana, you cannot you cannot interact with our children, with our schools, and that kind of thing. And for that, we are entirely grateful. And I think we're going down a path. Maybe we're just not at the point where we're ready to do that sort of integration yet. When they are ready, we are here. We're here and ready and waiting when they're ready. Outside of that, we will just continue trying to build and refine the model, and hopefully whoever can benefit from that, we'll be happy to share it with them.
Your presentation, sort of Donald Ford's comment, and it speaks to us. Or presentation speaks. So Donald says, look, we can all agree it's a kind of vital tool, early childhood education. But he sort of despairs about those who, this is one of the challenges I often have difficulty, like you, convincing people of what's going on. I mean, if you in the City University of New York, for example, when you look at retention rates and you try to, or pass fail rates in various courses, and you try to explain to someone that, if 50% people fail the course at the first hurdle, and then 50% of that 50% fails, and then another 50%, it's an exponential thing. So at the end, you have an eighth of the people there, or after 4 cycles, you have 1/32 of the people there.
That's exactly right. That's what's happening here. Yes.
So, and so Donald's point, I want to ask about, you talked about getting people to understand the seriousness. What other ideas do you see? What other demonstrations, so to speak, that you think can really communicate that seriousness of look, if we don't act to ensure that every single child is treated in a particular manner, that has access to a particular thing, then very shortly we will lose this game. What more do you think we can be doing to strengthen the urgency of that call at this moment?
Yeah, I really do think that the local private sector folks, like some significant education with the local private sector folks. Many of them are benefiting from the oil, directly or indirectly, from the oil and gas industry. And so when I say benefiting, I mean more projects, increased revenue, and things like that. And I think that many of them are so caught with day-to-day operations that they do not do the strategic look into the future. What happens a year or 2 or 5 from now when I cannot find the labor for my workforce? And many of them, you walk down any populated business street in Guyana right now, and you'll see help wanted, help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. Everywhere, help is wanted. And I don't know if they can. Now that's only on the retail service sector, because that area seems to be growing like wildfire. But just imagine when the help wanted. Well, we've seen that in the hospital, in the medical sector right now, because they're actually thinking about bringing in more nurses from overseas. But think of all of those jobs that I highlighted there in all of those various industries. Those are all help wanted areas. Within the next 5 years, all of those areas are going to be help wanted areas.
You've anticipated Joe's comment, which is that in 10 years the population will be more than 5 million seeking employment. So there are 700,000 today is likely to be absorbed. And actually, that was also one of the notes that I made when you spoke earlier. You made the point of saying our developmental model somehow should be the situation where we are importing not the skilled labor, but the broadly unskilled labor, and we seem to be, from a distance on the trajectory that goes in the opposite direction, and I have some positives and negatives. So we seem to be more in the direction of, let's say, importation of nurses, importation of doctors, the building of hotels. So then our long-term employment local is that of the person, is that of the service. And look, I don't want to be critical in this moment, because a job is a job is a job. And whether you have a job in the service sector at a, to speak to someone who does not have a job and then has the opportunity for a job, in the service sector in a 5-star hotel, that is better than nothing at all. So, to have a thought about some broader strategic vision. But I do have a thought about that broader strategic vision. And I wonder whether or not, based on what you see from STEM, how difficult, how challenging, to sort of invert that pyramid, to say that we want to pursue the high-end jobs for Guyanese and have these other jobs. I mean, it takes 2 or 3 years to train a nurse.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let's look at this. There are 200,000 students in the K-12 pipeline. 200,000. And let's say 100, maybe 78,000 of them are in the public school system. And then I just estimated the rest in the private school system. So around 200,000 students. That is not a lot. That's not a lot. That's not a big labor force. And therefore, everyone needs to have a sense of urgency around these 200,000 students. What do I mean? We need to understand why 50% of them are failing in nursery school, why 50% are failing at the 2nd grade assessment and the 4th grade assessment, and why it goes up to 60%, why it doesn't ever get better. These are things that we need to understand with the level of urgency that says, listen, I don't understand it. If you have an idea, you come in and help me with it. If you got an idea, because this boat is going down. Like you have to, there has to be a sense of urgency around this issue. And I often say, Terrence, I often explain to the STEM club leaders, the learning pod leaders, when I talk to them about absenteeism and children who don't show up, I say to them, you have to think of these children as if they were 5 diamonds in your purse. And one day you open up that purse and only saw 3 diamonds. Would you just say, oh, well, I still got 3. Let me go about my business. 2, no big deal. Maybe it'd show up. No, you would rip that purse apart to find those 2 additional diamonds. And that is the level of urgency with which we have to consider our young people who are falling out of the system, and to put a fix in place to resolve those issues. 200,000 is nothing.
So I want to make note of this very nice point of Esther Khan, which is, the strategies for local benefit have, in a sense, revolved around the local content policy and to maximize. And Esther is making a very important point. We have, in some sense, mandated business participation in some way. Might not our local content policy mandate require some contributions to STEM education, or more broadly? I think that's a wonderful idea.
That's brilliant.
That's a brilliant idea, and I will definitely think about how we explore that. And certainly, I mean, we've done this in the sense we've established a policy to create opportunities for local businesses and individuals to benefit from the country's audit. But we've done it purely within that sort of business sector. But what we're seeing is that we have a real need for this within the kind of broad education sector, and this is definitely something that we should be thinking. These conversations can go on for ever and ever and ever. And I think, once we have the sort of response that we've been getting here from folks, we all have to find a mechanism to hopefully bring this to an end. And, I will maybe take it to 11:43. So let's take each just about 3 minutes to kind of give a sort of closing remark, and then we'll. I still have to go teach today. I still have to teach my. I actually have 2 good classes today. I have some abstract algebra and some linear algebra to teach today. So I want to. Yeah, I also get to the office. So final remarks from you, Karen, and then Riyadh, and then I'll take the last word.
Yeah, Well, first, let me say thank you for inviting me here. I want to reiterate that, in in little Guyana, we got to make sure that these comments aren't taken in the political vein. And these are just, we're in dire straits, I believe. And we need to create an environment where our young people can flourish. And I firmly believe that there's talent everywhere. It's talent everywhere. You could find it in Bath and Port Morant and Tiger Bay and downtown in Bel Air or wherever. Talent is everywhere. Opportunity is not everywhere. And so we want to bring opportunity to talent wherever it lies. And to do that, we will need support from our corporate community, from our diaspora to continue to support, from our local folks, and from all of the people who understand the STEM imperative. Um, this is something that is critical to the development of our nation, and it's something that should be apolitical. It is something that should benefit every child in every community, regardless of whether they are in hinterlands or coastland or of whichever ethnicity. And so that is the value we want to bring to the table. And we are essentially just asking for support. We are asking for support. We're building out a model that we think that could benefit the entire education community, and we're willing to share that. And we just want to say thank you to all of the folks who have already contributed, who are very supportive and who understand the criticality of the work that we're doing. And finally, I want to say this. I want to say we have to go upstream and look and figure out ways to fix the problem upstream. And I think once we do that, we'll have more young people, more learners flowing through the system, and more opportunities for them to get some of these higher paying jobs, et cetera. So thanks again, you guys, and that's all I wanted to share with the audience today.
Yeah, thank you, Riyadh.
Thanks. But again, Karen, thank you very much. And I think that you are your own best champion for the work you're doing, based on what I've heard this morning. And I think I would hope that you've won over some converts, some more supporters. And I think that maybe Terence and I and David Lewis of the Caribbean Policy Consortium can have a deeper discussion as to how we might be able to support this type of thing. Because I know Terence has already done work to support STEM in Guyana. After all, he's a professor of mathematics and he knows this field better than I do. But I think I understand the STEM imperative better now, having heard your presentation. I get it. Without STEM, there'll be no innovation, there'll be no entrepreneurship, there'll be no equitable participation in the economic development of Guyana. And I think all of us here, if I may be presumptuous enough to speak for the virtual audience, I think all of us here have come away from your presentation more enlightened, and in my case, certainly uplifted by what you've had to say. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess thank you, Riyadh, and let me also express on behalf of the GBJR thanks to you, Karen, for really a really an excellent presentation that really got to the heart of the issue. I mean, I think the question I took away is, this is the visual image of what is feeding the pipeline, and understanding that we're losing at every stage along, and this transformative power of education, and the importance, that the imperative for STEM, and a question of our vision for how we enable strategies for local benefit, our vision, thinking through, as an example of this, thinking through what our vision looks like for partnership models between the industry and the community, thinking through, and I think this perhaps, I haven't kind of fleshed this out yet, but we have a broad sort of, what are the policy frameworks? That's the kind of question that's emerged. What are policy frameworks for for this kind of sustainable development. And then I think finally, how do we leverage the success and the lessons learned of STEM? I mean, like, for example, I felt mildly sad that you've noted that that it is likely that the robotics participation in the global robotics competition might be something that STEM Guyana moves away from. And certainly, um, you know, I note a very good point here. So, I mean, I've always felt one of the strengths of that is that I felt that, as Ulrich has noted, that something like the robotics challenge is a kind of bridge between our people, right? So I remember once being at one of the events that you held where the team was there, and I think we were so proud all to see the diverse quality of the team, the very Guyanese quality of the team that kind of captures all of the Guyanese brain from across the various, and so I think, like Ulrich has noted here, it can serve as a bridge, having our teams of our young people, members that reflect our different ethnicities, teaching them the values of partnership, the importance of cooperative learning, and having a positive effect on how they view each other and the need for the kind of interracial harmony that Guyana is much needed in Guyana. So certainly that piece left me a little sad, but nonetheless, I hope that this conversation can catalyze some more questions or some more movement in that direction to think about how that might be an element that is continued. And then finally, I should say, before I say final, the last thank you, I noted in the comments for and so our Hindu brothers and sisters in Guyana are also celebrating a holiday. This is the holiday of Navratri, and so forgive my amplification of Eid. Eid is one of the holidays that but there's no. I want to wish all those who are celebrating Navratri a wonderful. And I've just noted that this is a holiday where there's fasting for a certain number of days and then some broader celebration. So, blessings to our Hindu brothers and sisters also who are engaged in that holiday. So, colleagues, anything else for the good of the order, or we can end it here.
I think Karen's done a great job. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. That was actually